Well, good morning. We are back with another Grand Rapids Giving Day podcast, and I'm so excited to meet with you both this morning. Why don't we start with some intros, starting with you?
Yes, hi, I'm Iryonna Hogan-Davis, and I'm the CEO and founder of Meaning in Colors.
Amazing.
And I am Cynthia Owens, the CEO and founder of Dream, Keep It Moving Speaks.
Okay, wonderful. So I have not heard of your organizations. Okay, so I'd love to learn a little bit more about what you guys do, what you're involved with. Who are you trying to serve? So let's start with you.
Yes, so my organization is for youth.
Okay.
And the basis of my organization is just to empower, uplift, and celebrate young people. I have a couple programs. Dream Keep It Moving is a book, actually, that I created and turned it
Okay.
into a program.
Wow.
It also comes with curriculum. So a lot of small groups or organizations use my program
Okay.
with the youth that they serve. And then my second one is Letters from Joy. That's more of a self-awareness, self-finding kind of program.
Okay.
Analyzing your past and your present and planning for your future.
Wow. So tell me a little bit about the curriculum for the youth. Like,
Yes.
what's covered in that curriculum, and what's the importance of like weaving that into these different, youth groups and youth programming? Like, what's the need there?
So Dream Keep It Moving is a motivational journal for youth. The character's name is Dream. So every chapter is a different scenario or story, similar to what our young people go through today. So there's a chapter where Dream doesn't understand her family makeup. She comes from a broken home. There's a chapter where Dream loses her grandmother, so she's learning how to deal with grief.
Yeah.
And those are the makeup of each chapter. So there's activities where you can analyze the character's life as well as journal about your own. Self-motivation statements. That's my thing. I love to motivate. So self-motivation statements, some other motivation statements in each chapter.
Okay. That's awesome. And
Thank you.
what about your organization?
Yeah, so Meaning in Colors. So we have three major programs. So we have a transitional housing program. We have an Empowering Future Professionals curriculum, which that really is a combination of financial literacy, career readiness, self-identity, and then we transition them into a paid work-based learning opportunity.
Okay.
And then our Wealth Builders program, where that heavily focuses on financial literacy, but helping people to understand money in a different way.
Yeah.
And that's typically going to look like someone who desires home ownership, and maybe they're denied through the banks. And so we really work hand in hand with them to make sure that they understand the process or what to do to be able to be empowered to be able to go and apply for that loan again.
Wow.
And then our last piece is our community outreach. And so really that's our way to give back to the community. So we do things like our back to school events. We have our holiday pop-up shop. And so it's really to try to fill in that gap of the needs of the community.
Yeah. Man, that's amazing. So, I mean, I think in both of your organizations, like there's probably a pretty cool inception story of how you guys got into those areas. And I always love hearing about that, right? Because I mean, both of those are such like prevalent needs in our community. And what drew you to those areas that you're now serving in? So starting with you, Iryonna.
Yeah, and so what really happened for me, I was a first-time graduate. I chose to go to a private college, and amazing experience, but I ended up being in a domestic violence relationship at my senior year, and also ended up being pregnant. And so where my dreams was to be a criminal attorney, it kind of unfolded my senior year, and so I decided to move back to Grand Rapids. Well, when I moved back to Grand Rapids, one, my mother was very disappointed, and secondly, trying to navigate that housing space was horrible. And so when I moved to college, it was literally I looked at a newspaper and was able to find housing.
Yeah.
Moved in the next week. When I moved back to Grand Rapids, I could imagine the amount of things, the systems that were in place where it was like, oh, you made too much money. Oh, you don't make enough money. Oh, your credit's here. And I was like, oh my God, like, what is this?
Yeah.
And so I remember being in a very dark space. I actually slept in my car for 2 days at the McDonald's on Division. And I remember God, that's where he gave me my vision, because I said, it shouldn't be this hard to just get simple things.
Yeah.
Like, I know that I maybe screwed up and I'm having a child, but like, I should be able to get basic things, which housing at that point was it.
Yeah.
And so that's where he gave me my vision. He said, you're going to create a program that's going to remove barriers for people to be able to get housing. And so that's exactly what I did. So literally through my connections, I had a cheerleading coach who's like a second mom to me. She owned several properties in Grand Rapids. And so she literally allowed me to stay in one of her housing units. From that point, of course, I had my degree and everything. So I was able to get an entry-level position and kind of work my way up all the way, like right under the director. And so my coach was actually my first investor. She gave me the first part and we got our first housing unit.
Okay.
And so moved in 5 men from all walks of life, literally a foreign exchange student, a recently divorced man, someone who was incarcerated. I mean, it was amazing. And so what we did was we really tried to meet them where they were at. So we looked at everything that they needed to be successful once they left us.
Yeah.
Once we created that, we created a curriculum, a housing program. And so we duplicate the process. And so fast forward now, we have 6 housing units.
Oh my goodness.
And so, yeah. And then from that, we kind of seen the need and we were like, we don't want our youth to experience this. So how do we create something where they don't have to be in these safe situations, where we can teach them everything that they need so that they have a higher chance to be successful? And so that's where our youth programming comes in.
Oh my goodness. So cool. Yes. So cool. What was the story for you? How did you get into the world that you're now serving in?
Yeah. So as a young child, just always kind of felt sad. Didn't know what it was. Grew up in a 2-parent home from birth. Yeah. My parents are still married. Just was dealing with some things emotionally, mentally, didn't understand them. And got older and looking back like, I've been feeling like this for a long time. It's time to do some work.
Yeah.
And did a lot of self-work and just finding myself and what was going on. And then I had children. Very young, 15, 17, and 19. I was a mother. Now incorporate that into your soup.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now I didn't want to be a statistic. So I knew I was going to be a mother no matter what. And raised my children. And when my youngest turned 18, didn't know who I was. So I had to go into some self-discovery. And just, analyzing my youth, growing up and becoming the person that I wanted to be, I look back and I said, somebody has to start advocating for these youth. The loudest noise from the youth come from their silence.
Yeah.
And it is often ignored.
Yeah.
Children are told to go get out of the grown folks' face or, this is grown folks' conversation, go to your room. And I feel like they're ignored. And we have to bring them to light and pay attention to them because then they grow up and they'll go see Miss Iryonna. But no, I just became an advocate for youth and just been running with it. It's been an assignment from God.
Yeah.
Because when my youngest turned 18, I was going to relive every year I missed out on. And God said, no, you're going back to help save those young people that are going through what you went through.
Wow. That is so cool. I have to imagine that both of you interface and come into contact with so many heavy stories, right? Like, I mean, whether it's like somebody trying to navigate these very complex systems or somebody trying to navigate themselves, right? Like internally. And, I've always, as we've been going through GR Giving Day and talking with so many nonprofits, like, I'm always interested, like that first step for so many people that need these programs and need these organizations, like that is the hardest. And sometimes they can't make that for themselves, right? So what are some of the ways that you guys are getting into the community and doing outreach? Like you mentioned like advocacy, but like what does advocacy look like when silence is such a big part of that, So what does that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so for me, that's one of the many reasons why I do community outreach, and I like to say boots on the ground. So when we first started, especially serving the homeless community, we went just to their areas. We just started having conversations. Like it wasn't anything out of the norm. Like you treat people as such, right? And so we had to remove the stereotypes of like homeless people is this and homeless people is that because there was so many things that just weren't true. And so we started doing things like that. Then we started to like bring them socks and water and then food, right? And so developing things like that to expand to now, like our back to school events, we had 1,800 people show up. And so from that, right, you meet people where they're at and you provide something for them. But in return is where you're able to set the stage of like who we are. And so you get asked the questions in an indirect way and it filters down to the immediate need. And so We send out a lot of emails about what's next in our programming. We do a lot of giveaways, but it's really to just bring people together to say, hey, we know you're here for backpacks, but maybe you're struggling and you have a food security issue.
Yeah.
Maybe you are homeless, right? Maybe you struggle with some type of mental illness. Let us connect with you. Other things that we do is we really make it a point to attend a lot of vendor events. So we stay connected in collaboration with a lot of organizations in our community who's doing work that's outside of us because we can't do it all. In fact, it's so great to be here because with Cynthia, because being able to like mentor her in her space, now she's a contractor with me with Dream. And so just that intentional relationship, like we both believe in you so much. How do we work together and make it happen? You
That's
may
so
can
cool.
meet people in different spaces than I can and vice versa.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and I will mirror what she said as being where they are. And for me, there's a difference between sympathy and empathy. You know, you can have sympathy, but then to me, that means you feel sorry for someone. When you have the empathy, you're getting in there to understand what their situation is and why they feel like they feel. And that's kind of the basis of what I do.
Yeah.
I have always been around youth. I don't know what it is. I ran a youth football program that my church had created. Partner with so many different nonprofit organizations in the city and community, as well as my own. I want to be everywhere that the youth are. So it's just a mission to get out there and help as many people as possible.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, it's really cool that I think the through line that you guys are talking about is like togetherness is such an important part of like making these programs actually serve these communities, right? It's not that somebody might just have a singular struggle, but that singular struggle might be the doorway into figuring out all of the needs that they have and really being able to serve them in such a great way. That's so cool. So I want to touch back on just this idea of like youth and this outreach thing, right? Like, I think it's interesting, like from the housing side to the kind of the mental health and the advocacy and the awareness side, right? We've had a lot of nonprofits that we've spoken with throughout the course of these Giving Day podcasts. And I think it's super interesting that you mentioned like understanding, like that's at the core, right? I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, there was like, we were kind of going through like a big wave of like housing crisis in Grand Rapids, right? And you started hearing words like, gentrification, like being a part of what we do, right? And there's these communities that are getting either pushed out or separated. And, when I thought about that, I'm like, man, the understanding portion cannot exist, right? And like understanding is really the start of how we actually start to love and know people well. So like in that, like I just wonder like how that hits you. Like this seems to me like one of those problems that is like, oh my gosh, there's like so many mountains in this. Like how are we gonna do it? Right? Like do you guys ever sit in that or?
Absolutely. It's especially housing, right? When you think in terms of youth, there's a lot of hope there because you've been through so many lived experience, especially Cynthia and I, that you can speak to that exact experience and you can create situations and teach them to that point of how to not do things, right? So that's in terms of youth. Even though it's very complex, it's a little different. When you think in terms of housing and the systems above us, that's where it gets scary. When you hear statistics like wages only went up 30%, but inflation on housing has went up 70%. You can't lie about facts, right? So then you ask the question, well, who does that serve? Who can afford housing?
Yeah.
When they tell you that average household is only 43 to 63K, but in order to own a house, you have to be in a certain price point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you hear numbers like that, that's the complexity of like, how do we fix this, right? And so being in it every single day, you literally have to get so creative. When I tell you the amount of time it takes to get one family housed, it should not take that long. And the amount of times I have to say and paint the picture and explain to people, this is not someone who's just being lazy. This is someone who works 3 jobs.
Yeah.
This is just someone who was uneducated.
Yeah.
That is where the frustration and like you said, moving those mountains. But what I will say is when you chip away, and I can say in the 7 years of doing this, we are now getting into this eviction prevention space. People are starting to see, oh, wait a minute, it can be any of us, because it could, right?
Yes.
One
Yeah.
wrong situation, one job, that doesn't matter if you went to college, doesn't matter what, unless you're wealthy, right? Then that looks different. But the average person can be homeless in a matter of moments.
Yes.
And so I think people are starting to see that. People are going to grocery stores where they once paid $150 that can last them. They're paying $400 and $500, right? So it doesn't matter if you're on assistance. This is affecting everyone.
Yes.
And so now people are starting to listen, right? Not so much as have we solved the issue yet, because it's going to take time, right? Because this is years. But people are starting to listen and understand, wait,
Yeah.
we are all a part of this.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Man, that's so cool. So I want to bring it back to Grand Rapids Giving Day.
Yeah.
Okay. So the whole purpose of Grand Rapids Giving Day, right? The goal on Giving Day Tuesday, December 3rd, is to raise $250,000 that will go out to 50 plus female-owned nonprofits, right? So that's such a cool movement. That's such a cool thing that's happening in, our city. And there's a ton of need there that can go to fill and support, right? So what was the thing that compelled you guys to get involved with Giving Day?
Just the excitement of the process of it.
Yeah.
Giving Day is something I've bounced out ideas off of her for years. Like, man, this would be so nice. And if we did this, and let's bring more awareness to Giving Day, because that is the day for nonprofits to raise money. And, we hear Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, and then we're on to Christmas. No, there is Giving Tuesday. And that's a time for you guys to really get an opportunity to learn about nonprofits and donate.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, what about for you?
For me, it was more so like, I'm one of people, because of the work that I do, I've been recognized in many rooms now. It's so funny. Just being at a gala, someone's like, oh, I was just doing a presentation and added you in. And but to be completely honest, and Cynthia knows this, I am more of a doer. I would much rather be with my clients behind closed doors. I don't like being on the TV or any of those things.
Yeah.
People say I'm good at it, but I just rather spend my time there. But God spoke to me within the last 2 years, and he said, well, people have to see you, and they have to see the way that you do things. I know you've been doing this, and I know your intention on your heart is pure, but we need a lot more people to see what you're doing so they can do it. And so I really been intentional about, like, what spaces do I need to be in? So although this is to help us, we all got to still support the efforts of the mission at whole, right? Like, what part can I play? How can I be an asset to the whole campaign and everything? Because yes, we want to raise money, but then also for, Giving Day, we got to help them as well. Like, and so that's what it is for me.
That's awesome. So with that in mind, I mean, awareness is such a big portion of what all of the nonprofits do, right? Just getting out there, being known. And with that in mind, how can people get in touch with your organizations, and what is like the first step in getting involved with the nonprofits that you guys run?
Yeah, so I would say for us, definitely our website, www.meaningandcolors.com. We're located 950 28th Street, Building E, Suite 105. Believe it or not, though, 90% of our individuals come to us by word of mouth. But we're always in the community. We're doing different things. So our Facebook, our Instagram, so we're out there, in those social media outlets. But more so just, we love it when we just have partners who talk about us and come through the door that way, or the phone rings and it's like, hey, I need your help. And so, again, like I said, 90% of our, the people that we serve literally is word of mouth. So that's awesome for us. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. I'll mirror that, being in some awesome circles. It's word of mouth.
Yeah.
Hey, you should go check out, or, if I'm on Facebook or someone's on Facebook saying, hey, I need something great for youth, then my name will be tagged. But I do have social medias, Facebook, Instagram. Trying to get so much better. I'm in the older age bracket, so I'm like, let me just check one of those. But yes, those social medias. My email is dreamkeepitmoving@gmail.com.
Wonderful.
Love to come out and do speaking engagements. Just want to be where the young people are.
All right. Well, this was, I'm sure we could have spent probably multiple hours chatting this morning. And I mean, your missions are just so cool. So I really do encourage anyone who is watching or listening, just go check them out, right? I mean, it's such an important part of keeping our community healthy and whole. But thank you guys so much for sharing this morning. And as we lead up to Giving Day, I think it's going to be a great one. It's going to be so amazing. So
thank you, and thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.